Welcome back to the Drain Plug Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by tbnation.net. Visit tbnation.net for all your John boat needs. Dry hatches, EVA foam, Autoboat, all the good things can be found at tbnation.net. Thank you, TB Nation, for sponsoring this episode. So what are we drinking tonight?
We have...
Or what are we talking about tonight? Let's do
Well,
that.
first off, we're going to talk about the Autoboat, the new one.
Okay.
Hold on. It's called the Smart Head Pro System.
Okay.
Smart Head Pro System. What would that acronym be? SHPS? Ships?
Yeah,
It's the ships. the new
Accurately
Autoboat ships.
acronymed. Okay. That works.
All right. We got a bourbon and a rye tonight.
Okay.
We have both from ASW.
Yep.
And they're toasted line. So ASW is here in Georgia.
Yep.
America. And I've had the toasted bourbon for a while. It is a wheater.
Okay.
Traditionally not a wheater fan. This is one of the few that I actually like.
Okay.
You got the rye gifted to you not too long ago.
For safety purposes, yes, it was gifted to me.
It was gifted to you not too long ago.
Yeah.
I've never seen the toasted rye in the wild.
Yeah,
This is the only reason I don't have it.
Store pick from Turtle Creek.
Yeah. So I've already taken just a little smidgen of the rye.
Yeah.
And I have some opinions before we even get started. But which one do you want to try first? You want to try the bourbon or the rye first?
I think I want to. Let's just try the weeded first. The bourbon.
Okay.
Bourbon. Yeah. We'll just see. We'll baseline it off of that. So proof on this one.
All right. So this one's also a store pick. This one was from, I believe, Nitro to Go is where I got this. All right. This one's 5 years, 7 months old. It is 5% corn, 45% wheat, and I believe that's 4% barley or 9% barley. I can't really read it. 57.8%.
Okay. This isn't MGP or anything, is it? Like I heard that these were.
No, this is distilled and bottled here in Atlanta.
Okay.
That's why it's got such a young age on it, and also that crazy dark color.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I like the color of it. Looks really good.
that's the thing with Georgia bourbons and Texas and places where it gets a lot hotter during the summer, and we have the milder winters. They seem to take on a lot more color than the Kentucky stuff or the Tennessee stuff. I don't always drink wheat, but when I do, this is the one that I drink.
Autoboat.
All right, so if you haven't seen our YouTube video yet on the Tiny Boat Nation channel, the Autoboat is coming. It's just a little bit more delayed than we like.
Let's just pump the brakes for a second.
Pump the brakes.
Go back. What is Autoboat in general?
So if you've never heard of Autoboat, Autoboat is a trolling motor adapter for your what we call cheap clamp-on trolling motors.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be your $99 special Minn Kota Edge or your Minn Kota Endura C2s.
Mm-hmm.
Your Newport NV series, the Newport X series, and these are all trolling motors that you would traditionally clamp onto the back of your boat and use that as your main form of propulsion.
Right. They have a transom clamp style mounting bracket to them.
Yep.
But your intention when you're running it with the Autoboat is to put it on the bow of the boat.
Yes, it can run on the transom, which we'll get into later. Just remind me if I forget.
Okay.
But the Autoboat is designed to be run on the front of the boat like a bow mount. So you will need some type of way to clamp it on the front of your boat, whether that be one of those aftermarket clamps.
Not necessarily a clamp, but a bracket.
Some type of bracket so that you can clamp to that bracket.
Yeah.
So what the Autoboat does is it replaces your trolling motor's electrical system.
Okay.
And turns it into one, you can steer it with a remote. It has remote electronic steering. It has remote speed control. And it also has a few GPS functions as well. Like it's not called spot lock, but that's what everybody calls it.
Right.
Anchor mode. You also have a navigation heading where you can just point it in one direction. If the wind starts blowing you off course, it will correct it automatically and bring you back in line.
Okay.
And then it also has some tracking features where you can go into a map and make your own little track, record it, or you can pinpoint it on the map and it will follow that track. So like say you wanted to fish a bank line or something or a bunch of docks, you could draw that out on a map or you could record that track on a map and it will follow that for you.
The other way to operate it is through the app on your phone.
Yes, it does have a phone app that has the same controls that the remote does, but it gives you a little bit more features because you have the mapping and the graphing and all. Not, well, I say mapping and graphing. It has the map on it that you can do the tracks on.
Can I use it with a foot pedal?
No, you cannot.
What if my foot pedal is wireless?
No, it doesn't work on any trolling motors that have a wireless foot pedal.
Okay, just checking. We get asked that a lot. So.
Well, that is something that Autoboat is looking into, is making their own foot pedal. It's in the works. I don't know if it's going to come or not, but that's something that they've already talked about.
Okay.
Some people like have the option of the foot pedal, but as of right now, the Autoboat doesn't come with one. It's just remote only. The previous version of Autoboat was a lot different than the newest version that's coming out late December, early January 2025. Just depends on when it gets here. The old system had a black box that you had to mount inside the boat somewhere.
Yep. Almost like your Panoptics or live imaging boxes.
And that was cumbersome for people that didn't like that because it's one thing you had to hide in the boat, or if you had a small kayak or something, you didn't really have a way to run wires underneath your deck. The other thing that a lot of people didn't like about the first version was the GPS puck was a separate unit, and it mounted onto your trolling motor shaft. And depending on how close you had it to the trolling motor, could cause some electrical interference issues. What they've done on the newest version is the Smart Head Pro system actually replaces the head of your trolling motor. So your tiller handle, the whole head, everything comes off, and you put the Smart Head on. The reason it's called the Smart Head is because they've taken all the electronics out of the black box and the GPS and put it inside the trolling motor head.
So now nobody has to mess with installing the GPS to the shaft or making sure that, because that was a big issue with the first one, was there's a lot of electrical interference going on with that GPS.
There can be, yes, in certain situations.
A lot of that gets kind of weeded out. The one thing I noticed about it was the amount of wires that are no longer getting wrapped around the shaft, for one, or two, just it streamlined the entire profile of the Autoboat in general, in my opinion.
The new one only has a 2-wire hookup, just your positive and negative to your trolling motor battery. There's no other wires to run anywhere in your boat. The wire that runs from the trolling motor head down to the actual turning motor has been upgraded. So just to back up a little bit, when they decided they were going to come out with this new model, they sent us the first demo back in early summer. Yeah. And we started playing around with it, and there was a bunch of things that me, Mike, and a few other people weren't particularly crazy about. We wanted to see it done better. So we offered those suggestions to Autoboat, and they said, well, let's just hold on. We're going to come out with a new version. Let's work on getting this the way you guys want it.
Right.
And on the first version, that was one of the things that I didn't like, was it had a cord that went from the auto drive, which is what they call the turning motor. There was a cord that was going from that up to the trolling motor head that you had to plug in, and then you had your positive and negative wires coming out of the trolling motor head. And so you wind up having a split of 4 wires going all over the place.
Yeah.
On the new version, they've condensed that down. It's one big coiled cord that comes out of the head and goes down to the turning motor, and then the turning motor has the 2 wires that come off of it. And they've reconfigured it in a way to where the wires don't really get in your way.
Right.
So when I tested this new version, that was one of the first things I did. Is I took it out to the water, and I just spun the trolling motor head as many times as I could in each direction to see if I could get the cord to wrap. And the new cord is actually thick enough and strong enough to where you can only wrap it 2 or 3 times, and then the cord actually stops the trolling motor from turning anymore.
Yeah, that's a beefy cord that's on there.
Very beefy. But what that does is keeps you or prevents you from damaging the cords, because the old one had really small cords on it, and you could wrap it so many times that you could actually stretch the cord, or in some cases I've even seen people break them because they just weren't paying attention and it wrapped around. So on this one, that's not an issue anymore because it physically can't happen. The new coiled cord coming out of the head is so thick, and it's not, I wouldn't say stiff, it's just a very thick rubbery plastic silicone. I don't know what it is particularly that they used, but it's extremely robust. Like, you couldn't break it if you tried.
No.
The other thing that is a huge upgrade from the previous model, and even the first demo that they sent us earlier this year, is the turning motor, which they call the auto drive. New auto drive is bigger, stronger, and can actually turn a 55-pound thrust trolling motor with 0 issues.
Okay.
The previous model could turn a 55-pound thrust, but it could not do it at full speed. So if you were going speed 10,
yeah, you had to bump it back a few.
you had to bump it back and it would only go in one direction at high speeds. So what would happen is you'd be going straight. You could turn right without any issue because that was the same way that the prop was rotating.
Right.
But if you tried to turn back left at like speed 7, 8, or 9, it would actually keep it from turning left because the prop torque was stronger than the motor.
Yeah.
Now the motor's the turning motor, the auto drive, is way stronger. And took it out, did tests with 2 different 55-pound thrust trolling motors at full speed. 0 issues at all. It will turn it. I can even pick the trolling motor up out of the water and have it vertical. Is that vertical or horizontal? Horizontal. Yeah, horizontal. And it will turn it up in the air without any issues. And I could not do that on the previous model because the trolling motor head was too heavy.
Gotcha.
So that's a huge upgrade. The next big thing that they upgraded was the actual head itself, having all of the computer brains or the black box or everything you want inside of it. What they did is you can't see it because the new unit's sealed, but I have seen the inside of it. And the computer system is separated from the GPS puck, and the GPS puck is up as high as it can possibly get inside of that thing.
Yeah.
So, and the cord's a lot shorter now because you don't have 10 feet of cord running all over the place. It's actually made the GPS a lot more accurate.
Okay.
By quite a bit. So my testing that I did over the weekend with the first demo unit, even with no wind, I was still able to keep the trolling motor within 7 to 9 feet-ish from where I parked it. But, when you have no wind, the back end of the boat's going to swing all the way around and all over the place.
You almost need like a rear rudder type situation.
Even with a rod, like I had a motor down in the water and it still spun me around, but the trolling motor head never moved. Like it was only a few feet from where I marked it at all times. You'd have like a little small wind gust and the back end of the boat would blow around and it would pull you right back into place.
Right.
Now, when I went out into the main body of water and I was in like a 2-mile-an-hour wind or a little bit of current, that thing held rock solid, no more than about 3 or 5 feet. Maybe 5 feet at the most is as far as I ever got away from the spot that I locked on.
That's crazy.
And that was only because the wind was kind of gusting when I first tried it out. Right. So it was a very, very light wind, and it would gust up to about 4 to 5 miles an hour. And that's when you would notice that it was still holding you in place, but it would just kind of let you pull off a little bit further than you were before. Mm-hmm. And then once that wind picked back up, it was able to get the trolling motor just in the right sweet spot to keep you pointing in the direction that you wanted to be. But it never left the immediate area of where I spot locked it at.
Right. I have yet to try the new one, but how would you feel about a unit like that on a bass boat?
20, maybe 22 feet at the most. And I only say that because it only works with a 55-pound thrust trolling motor right now.
Right.
They don't make a whole lot of trolling motors bigger than 55, except for the Newport 62-pound. Yeah. And as of right now, the Autoboat does not work with it because of heat. It 12 volts generates a lot of heat at 62 volts, or at 62-pound thrust. It's almost 60 amps, which is where the circuit breaker is built into in the new unit, which I'll talk about in a second. That's another new feature. But they are already, we're getting these new units in. They're already talking about an upgrade in the future of a model that will work with the 62-pound Newport, because I know it is a popular, what I call a cheaper style trolling motor.
Right.
But it is going to have a bigger head heat sink in it to mitigate that heat.
Right.
I take the coolness up one factor more is I have found a bow mount trolling motor that this actually works on, and it is the Edge series of Minn Kotas. So I've been testing this out for about 3 months now on my boat. I have an Edge 45. And it's a very easy modification. There's not much to it, and we're going to have a kit that will give you everything that you need, and we'll talk more about it.
Well, I only asked that about the bass boats. I mean, obviously you don't want to put that on like your big 20-something foot Skeeter. I don't think it's going to be ideal for those. And most of you already have an Ultrex on there anyways, or something similar to that. I got asked the question from a guy that's doing these professional bass fishing tournaments where now next year they're limiting the number of trolling motors you can have on your boat because everyone's using those crappie brakes.
Oh, really?
So they don't want you to use that anymore.
Oh, okay.
So he was going to use the Autoboat. I guess I really still didn't understand what he was trying to do with it, but he was going to try to replace his Ultrex up front with the Autoboat, so that he could it still wouldn't interfere with his scoping, I'm gonna be honest, sir. I don't think that that's a very good idea. You know, which
I don't know
it's
if I
not.
trade an old Trex for an Autoboat.
But that got us onto the point of when you go to Bass Pro and you're buying those brand new trackers, a lot of them are outfitted with that 12
Minn Kota
volt
Edge.
Minn
Yeah.
Kota Edge on the front of it.
Yeah.
Which that might be a perfect boat to
Yeah,
just add
absolutely.
this Autoboat to if you do your little conversion to it to make it work on that bow mount style trolling motor.
And we're going to have a video going over it, but just to kind of give you a brief rundown, the clamp-on style trolling motors, the transom style trolling motors have a small piece of plastic where you have the depth collar that screws in. On the edge, you don't have that. And it's a very similar location where it's going to mount, but where it mounts onto the trolling motor, you will have to drill and tap a small hole, which we're going to send drill and tap bits out for people that want to do this, and as well as the bolt that you need. But that's the only thing that keeps you from running it on an edge is having a place to mount the actual turning motor.
Right.
And now that we've got that figured out, we can show it on video. It's really not that difficult to do. So it really opens up a lot of possibilities for the Autoboat to be used on bow mount trolling motors that are already in existence, because the Edge is a pretty popular trolling motor because of how affordable it is.
It's affordable, and there's not a whole lot to it. It's pretty bare bones, you know.
No. Now, if you have a cable drive version of the Edge, which a lot of the like bass trackers and stuff do, you will have to remove the cable system. You won't be able to use the foot pedal anymore, but at least you'll have all the features of the Autoboat. Now, if they come out with a foot pedal later on down the road, that's something that you'll be able to add on to it. Okay. Which brings me to the next big upgrade, which was the new computer system that's in it is able to be updated with firmware. So you'll be able to go into your phone, download the newest version of the app that'll have the firmware on it for any new features that they come out with or any bug fixes or anything like that. And you'll be able to send it to the Autoboat unit and basically upgrade it wirelessly. So it's a pretty cool feature. That's going to come in handy when we start working on more GPS capability. Because right now the tracking and making your own tracks is kind of basic. There's not a lot to it.
Right.
And they did that just for simplicity reasons.
Yeah. And cost. I mean, like,
and
you don't
cost.
have to pay for an app or anything.
Yeah, the app is free, so you're not really paying for anything. But we want to get to the point where we have some more advanced features. We just don't want to overload the app.
Right.
So there's a few key things that we're going to be working with Autoboat on over the next, couple of months. So when the next generation comes out, that we will be able to release the firmware and you'll have some more capabilities on it. One of the other upgrades that we were talking about a few minutes ago, the circuit breaker.
Yes.
The old Autoboat did not have a circuit breaker. You needed to run some type of, wire one in.
Right.
The new one has an electronic one built in. It's just a standard feature. It comes with it.
Okay.
It's set at 60 amps because that's the most the system can handle on 12 volts. But the way that it works is I actually got to test this out once by accident and the rest of the time I did it on purpose. But what I did was I ran into a stump, and I just kept the prop spinning against the stump over and over and over to cause the amps to spike up. And you'll hear a click in the motor, and it just stops. Everything turns off. Well, there's a button on top of the motor now that's an on-off switch, which acts kind of like a kill switch. If you ever get into an emergency situation, you can just kind of slap the top of the motor, and it'll kill the motor, so you can fix whatever's going on or get back to shore safely.
Get you out of that sticky situation.
Yep, which I did. And if you guys watch the video that's on the outdoor or the TBN channel, you'll be able to see it. But the circuit breaker is pretty simple. Once it clicks, all you have to do is just use the remote, turn it back on, and the system's back up and running again. So, but when it came in handy this weekend, is I was actually testing, like I ran the trolling motor up into a shallow bank, and I was in the mud. And I had it full blast, and I was just trying to see if I could get it to trip the circuit breaker, like how long it would run just in mud before it finally was just like, I'm over amps.
Right.
So I sat there for about 15 seconds, and I guess the trolling motor like broke itself free. But when it did, it was turned sideways. So I just started doing this big full speed spin.
Holy cow.
Well, I was filming at the time, and I was trying to hold on to the tripod with the camera, and it was just spinning in circles. But when I started spinning, it hit a stump, and the whole trolling motor lifted up. So the gear drive was not engaged with the auto drive turning motor. I couldn't push anything on the remote to get it to stop. So I just reached up and slapped the top of the unit, and it hit the kill switch and just turned off. As soon as it turned off, the unit dropped back down. What it was is the prop speed or the prop torque was keeping
the
it.
pressure of the pull up
Yep.
and not engaging that gear system.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
So you ever had one that's like on your bow mount trolling motor where you're kind of holding it up to get out of some shallow water,
Yeah.
and it's like it's constantly wanting
So
to
can
push
you
up?
do that with this? Like,
Technically, you
theory?
can.
Okay.
You can just pick the whole entire thing up and kind of hold it in place until you get going, and then once you get going, it'll stay there on its own.
Right.
But you have to shut it down or
In
at least
order-
stop it
Right.
to get it to engage the gears again. But the circuit breaker's a cool function to keep, one, you from damaging your trolling motor from over amperage, but
Right.
two, if you ever have a overcurrent from your battery or anything, it will cut it off to keep you from damaging your trolling motor
Okay.
and to keep the battery from continuing to draw amps out of it. So
Right.
that's a nifty little feature. I like the kill switch, not only because it's a definitive on-off button if you ever get into a bad situation, but for people like me that can't hear worth a crap.
Yeah, the beeps is all you had on the last one.
Exactly. So this new one has a light built into the switch. So I can actually look at the top of the trolling motor and see if the blue light's on, and I know that it's on.
Gotcha.
So, because as soon as I get on the boat, the wind and the water, I can't hear the beeps at all.
Right.
But I'm deaf, so.
With all these additions, did the price change at all?
For this first batch that's coming,
Yeah.
no, the price is not changing, because when we initially put the pre-sale out,
Yeah.
the people that ordered it were ordering the first generation of it. When they decided to redesign it and come out with all these new features, the price did bump up a little bit. I don't think it's much. I still think it's below $700.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to pass that cost on to people.
Right.
So we're actually eating the cost of the new generation for this first 300 units. After this pre-sale is done, then it will go up to the new cost, which I cannot remember right off the top of my head, but I want to say it's like $699 or something like that, or $689. It's not a whole lot more.
Right.
But all the additional features in it, it did bring the cost up.
Okay.
So what did you think about the toasted ASW bourbon?
I liked it. I don't think it would be one that I would go to constantly, or I don't know if I'd buy it again either. But
I'm glad you didn't buy it. Because one is hard to find.
I kind of thought it was the same one that you had,
No, it's
the one that I got.
Yeah. The
So she
toasted,
tried to get me to buy that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, I want to try this other one.
The toasted bourbon is, one, hard to find, and two, it's very expensive for what it is for a
Really?
5-year bourbon. Traditionally, I see it for anywhere between like $90 and $110. I think retail on it's right at $80, and I passed up about 5 or 6 of these bottles before I finally found one at like, I want to say I paid like $94, $95 for that bottle.
Oh, wow.
So it is good for what it is, being a 5-year.
Right.
Like, I'm surprised it's as good as it is, but again, it's a high cost for what you're getting.
Right.
I do like, for a weeder, it's probably one of my favorite weeded bourbons that I've ever had. I don't know what they do with the toasting process. It's basically double oaked is what it is.
Right.
But to me, it's really good.
Let's see what this rye is all about.
All right.
Definitely that more floral scent to it.
Now, this rye is 6 years, 11 months. The finish on it was for 2 months, and this one is 57.9% alcohol by volume, so almost 115 proof. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, this one definitely has some different notes to it. It's on the bourbon, it's very heavy on the barrel char and the vanilla, just a little bit of caramel. This one's a lot more barrel char with a sweet floral note to me.
That one's a little easier to sip than the other one.
I think it's less harsh, but it also drinks a little below its proof.
I got just a little bit of dryness at the end, but it wasn't a whole lot. Not too shabby.
I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So what other, I know you had a lot of questions about the Autoboat.
Well, here's my other big one.
Okay.
Since this is a new unit, does that expand the brand options that I'm able to use the Autoboat with? You know, like, is this going to limit, like, will it work on, like, a water snake or any of the kayak trolling motors, the motor guides? Is it still limited to kind of like the Minn Kota style trolling motors?
As of right now, we know that it works on the Newport NV series,
Okay.
the Newport X series, but not the 62 pound, just up to 55 pound.
Okay.
It works on the Minn Kota C2s, the Minn Kota C2 Endura, and all the Minn Kota transom mounts that have the maximizer, the digital maximizer. I think they call them the Endura Max.
Yeah.
You're going to be removing the entire trolling motor head, so the maximizer is gone anyways. It doesn't even matter.
Oh,
you don't have to do any modifications or nothing. You're going to pull the trolling motor head off, cut your positive and negative wires, and throw that thing away.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it does work on those. The water snake is still in question. I know the one that I get the most questions about is the TM24, the teeny tiny one that they sell.
Yes.
For like mounting off the side of your kayak. I know for a fact it does not work with that one because that one has a 1-inch shaft. The Autoboat right now is only made for 1 1/8 inch shaft. Now I have heard of people like wrapping them with a shim or electrical tape or something and just kind of clamping that thing on or gluing it on as best they can. I'm not going to say that I recommend that.
Yeah.
But you could definitely make it work if you wanted to.
Okay.
The motor guides, unfortunately, have a very weird collar system on them that is way bigger than the Autoboat. I have not figured out how to make it work yet, but I also haven't sat down and played with it a lot. That's my next project, I guess you could say, is to get a hold of one of those motor guide trolling motors and rip it apart and see if I can make it work. I spent a lot of time on the Minn Kota Edge trying to get that system to work and make it as simple as possible for people. So I am going to play with the motor guide and see if I can make it work. But it looks like to me, just from first glance, it's going to take a lot more modification than probably most people are willing to do. But I'm going to play around with it and see. That's kind of one of my favorite things to do, is sit around and figure out how to make stuff work. So
Is there a certain battery that people should or should not use with it?
You can use anything you want. It works with lead acid and with lithium. It really just depends on what you want to spend your money on. Okay. The lithium is something that I always recommend to people. The batteries are getting lighter and lighter and more powerful, and the price is slowly but surely starting to come down on them. So I always recommend lithium if you can get it, but it's not required for the Autoboat. It'll work with either one.
Okay.
I did get a question the other day about 24 volt and 36 volt. So
yeah, I was kind of going to go that direction.
The Autoboat's 12 volt only for right now.
Yeah.
We have expressed an interest to Autoboat in a 24 volt system.
Yeah.
They said they're going to look into it, but I don't know if that's coming or not. I know that's something they're going to look into. My other suggestion was for them to make a 12/24 volt that would work on either one. But I did, even after people saying that, there's a very few amount of trolling motors that are 24 volt that the Autoboat would work on anyways. You got the very basic Riptide models.
Because of the mounting location of the motor and all that.
Yes. And with the Riptide, you would still have to do kind of that same modification that I did on the Edge to make it work. The other one was, there's a Newport that's 70-pound thrust, I think, and it's really just going to depend on the mounting situation with that. But you start talking about pushing a lot of amps through a very small trolling motor head computer. You got to kind of be careful, and it's got to be designed right. So they're not going to just throw something out there and hope that it works. They're going to take their time and actually test it and make sure that it works well before they put something out. So that's on their radar. But as of right now, it's 16 volt or 12 volt only. And I've also had a couple of people asking about the Newport 180 series motors that go on the kayaks. Those are all 36 volt. So, and it has a speed controller like a Spirit does, has a top mount control.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that is something that can be adapted later on down the road. We would just have to wait for Autoboat to see. But that is something that I've mentioned to them.
Right. Recalibrating the remote and stuff like that, are all those operations the same?
Yeah, as far as function goes, nothing's changed. You still have, hold down the end button as soon as you get to the water, to get it to calibrate, and it still takes a couple of minutes once you get into the water. So, like what I normally do is, as soon as I put the boat in the water while I'm parking my truck, I go ahead and deploy the trolling motor and turn it on so that it can start acquiring a GPS signal. In certain areas, it does take a little bit longer to find satellites to hook up to, but generally it's within a couple of minutes. I think the longest I've ever had to wait was like 3 to 4 minutes.
Okay.
I've heard some customers say that they've had to, in really, really remote locations or where there's a lot of cloud cover or a lot of tree cover, they've had to wait, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, to get GPS to hook up. But generally, I think on this newer unit, just from my testing, not only does it seem more accurate because the GPS puck is up higher, but I also feel like it connects a little bit faster than the old one did.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
I mean, I went to 3 different lakes in 3 days, and every single time I put it in the water, I turned it on, and within like 20 seconds, it was ready to calibrate. So it wasn't taking no time at all. And I wasn't in any like super remote locations. I was in, fairly, I wouldn't say metro area, but, fairly populated area. So I know I had good satellite coverage, but the rest of the functions on the remote are still the same. It actually has the same remote as the original version. Still has the left and right, up and down, has your anchor button, has your nav point button, and has a cruise button.
I can take you to a really nice place that might not have good cell or satellite
Oh,
coverage.
we're going to have to. And we're going to keep testing it. We've still got a lot of trolling motors to test it on and see, just make sure that it works, because our list on the website is going to have a complete list of trolling motors that we physically tested it on, and we know that it works with.
Right. I understand that people think that we're kind of beating around the bush with it, but the initial time frame of expected arrival was October the first time, right? And then it was
Well, all right. So here's how the actual timeline went down, and this is just for full transparency. This has nothing to do with us, other than we made some suggestions to make it better.
Right.
So the old version of the Autoboat with the black box, we sold out of those in like June, I think, early June this year. And we went ahead and started a pre-sale for the next 300 units that were coming in. Well, right after we started the pre-sale, they decided they were going to swap to the newest version, which is the Smart Head. Yeah. So I said, well, before you guys, sign up for that, I was like, send us a few so we can test them out, make sure that everybody's going to like them and it's as good as the old model or better.
Right.
So they sent the new one in, and we liked it, but there was some things that we wanted to change about it.
Yeah.
At that time, they were thinking that it was going to be like August, September when they would be arriving. Well, once we got into the weeds of it and actually started doing the computer programming, coming out with a new computer that would fit inside the head, we did some more cordage changes, some programming stuff for the firmware. Then it got moved to like, we were thinking mid-October to late October.
Right.
Well, once it started getting into it, they decided to add the kill switch feature. And then, that's it. So they decided to add in the kill switch feature, and then we decided to go with the bigger, stronger motor so that we knew it would work with some of the bigger, higher horsepower, or not horsepower, some of the higher thrust motors. So they had to build a new motor, they tested it, and then sent it to us to test. And then when we finally gave the approval on it, that we knew this new unit was what we wanted it to be, they were like, okay, well, we're going to have to push the time back to late November, early December. So we were hoping that they were going to be here before the end of November, and we would have them shipped out by, like first week in December or so.
Right.
Once they got in there and started building all the computers and stuff for it, working on the firmware side of it, you have to, when you go into firmware type stuff, you have to worry about cybersecurity because you don't want the system to be vulnerable to people that are evil and want to hack into your trolling motor and take it over, or mess with your functions or your settings or anything like that.
Super messed up.
It would be, and I'm not saying that that's an issue, but we want to eliminate that from the get-go. We don't want people to have the ability to have some crazy computer on their boat log into your trolling motor and then screw your fishing trip up.
Right.
So they had to do some security type stuff to make it completely safe. And now that we've got all that stuff sorted out, we've got the firmware working. And all the new features, it's just going to take a little bit longer to build. Yeah. I mean, they're working hard on it. I literally talk to them 6-7 days a week, getting updates and telling us what they're doing. And so, like I said in the video that we did the other day, they're expected to leave Brazil by December 15th, which is only 15 days later than we expected them to be here.
Right.
But customs is an issue.
Yep.
It has to go through customs in Brazil. It has to be flown here to Atlanta. And then it's got to go through U.S. Customs. Yeah. And U.S. Customs is where it usually gets held up, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We don't know.
It can be fast and it could be slow.
Exactly. So, but we are fully prepared that the second that they come in, we will be packing them all up and they will all be going out. Because I'm pretty sure at the rate they're selling now, by the time this podcast comes out, they're either going to be really close to being sold out or they're already going to be sold out.
Right.
But if you don't get in on a pre-sale, it's not a big deal because we've got 500 more coming at the beginning of 2025.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's going to be like January or February, But probably by the time the snow melts, we'll have them in stock and we'll have more than we need. So we won't have to do the whole pre-sale deal.
Yeah.
We'll have, people can actually have them. We'll have
You'll
them in
just
stock.
be
And
ordering it. It's going to ship next day.
Yep. Yeah, same or next day, depending on what time you order. If you order early in the morning, usually before 10 our time here on the East Coast, we usually have them out the same day, as long as we're not too busy.
Is there a specific shaft length that this has to work with or on?
No, you can use it on any shaft length. Shaft length doesn't matter.
Even if it's like one of those small kayak ones?
Yes, it'll work on that just as long as you have enough room to mount the auto drive and the locking collar.
Yeah.
And still have enough room for your trolling motor to get down into the water.
Okay.
Shaft length really doesn't
So
matter.
I guess it really just depends on how far down that trolling motor needs to be off your kayak.
Yes.
If it sits higher, you're less likely for it to work.
Yeah. Well, it'll still work. It's just you may not have full contact of the prop with the water.
Okay.
You may be kind of sucking in air a little bit. I want to say when I measured it, the overall distance on your shaft that you're going to lose is right around like 5.5, 6 inches.
Okay.
So if you got a really, really short, like 24-inch trolling motor for your kayak, you may be towing that line of it being really deep enough. Yeah. Luckily, the trolling motors are relatively cheap that they work on. You know, if you get a Black Friday special or something like that on a Minn Kota Endura C2, those things are usually like $89-$99. So that's not a huge deal if it doesn't work on your existing trolling motor. I know one of the other questions that I got a lot was the old trolling motors, like the super, super old ones.
Yeah.
As long as it has the same mounting style as the Minn Kota Endura, and it's a 1.1/8 shaft and less than 55-pound thrust and 12 volts, it would work. Now, we get a lot of questions of, will it work on my 1972 Motor Guide XI 1347.2? And I'm like, I have no clue. I've physically never even seen one of those before. You can't buy them anywhere, so I don't have any way to test it. So if you want to buy it and test it at your own,
that's at your own risk. Worst case scenario, you're getting a new motor.
Yeah, $99 trolling motor is not a terrible expense considering that you're getting most all of the features of an Ultrex in a smaller package for less than $750 with the trolling motor. Yeah, you buy the trolling motor for $99 and the Autoboat for $649. I mean,
under $800.
Yeah, under $800. You got some pretty good features on it.
Yeah, that's not bad.
All right, so we'll just run through some of these questions that we had on our YouTube channel when we posted this video the other day. One of the questions was asked was, will these work with the Sea-Doo Fish Pros? Again, if it's not a trolling motor that's on the list, we don't know if it'll work yet. We have to try it out and see. One of the comments that we got was you should add a magnetic kill switch on the head. That was actually one of the things that we talked about. The only problem with having a magnetic kill switch is you are tethered to the trolling motor. So, like, if you got this up on the front of a bass fishing style boat and you're, got your nav point on and you're cruising down a bank line to fish and you wind up hooking up with a fish and you got to run to the back of the boat to grab your net, you're going to disconnect from that thing. And now your trolling motor's dead in the water, but that may have been the only thing keeping you from wrecking into a dock or running into a bunch of trees or whatever because you had that tracking system on. So the idea that we came up with was a quick way to easily slap just the top of the trolling motor because that was the most natural thing to do if something were to go bad. So that's why we didn't do the magnetic kill switch. Another guy asked, will this work for transom mounted situations? I was seeing the more difficult for the autopilot anchor functions to work reliably. Transom-mounted motors will often not be able to rotate 360 degrees without coming in contact with the stern. Interested in your answers. So, short and sweet answer is yes, it will work on a transom. The long version of that is you can go into the app and you can switch the remote from bow mount to stern mount.
Oh, you can?
Yes, so that when you're looking at the app, your steering will be correct. So, like, if you got it on the back and you want to steer left, it's designed to be on the front of the boat. So if you would steer left, it would normally steer right. But you can flip the remote in the app and use it as a stern
That's a
motor.
new feature.
It actually got released on the newest version of the app, I think earlier in the summer.
Okay.
But we didn't really we didn't really do any videos on it.
Do much with that, yeah.
But we didn't push it because there's a lot of negatives with running it on the back.
Okay.
You lose most of your GPS function. So the way that the GPS is designed it uses both a electronic GPS and a compass. And what it's designed to be on the front of the boat, so it always wants to pull the boat in the direction that you're going. If you put it on the back, it's going to want to spin the boat around and pull it backwards, or try to turn the boat around and push, which doesn't always work well. The other reason that I'm not going to say that I don't recommend it, but the biggest issue is when you're in the wind, having your motor down in the back of the boat and the trolling motor on the front. That motor acts like a rudder and helps keep you situated and anchored a lot more precisely than if you put it on the back and you don't have anything to act as a rudder in the front. It's going to want to blow you all over the place.
That's something I didn't even take into consideration, but it makes a lot of sense.
And because of the mounting orientation of it, if you were to try to use any of the tracking features, it's going to do it all backwards.
Exactly.
It's going to pull you instead of... If it was on the front of the boat, it would be pulling the boat in the right direction, which is the way most people fish.
That's another good question that I did get recently that I just thought about is if you're in the middle of a tracking and something happens, you catch a fish, you hit a stump or something like that.
Yeah.
Can I just go back into the middle of that track and finish it off? Or is it going to make me go all the way back to the front to the starting point and then rerun that whole route?
So this is a feature that I'm working with Autoboat on right now. What we're going to add is basically a pause feature. So like say you've got a track, you're running down a bank line, you're fishing up underneath a bunch of docks.
Yeah.
You get hung up and you want to just pause where you're at and then resume once you get yourself unstuck.
Right.
That's not a feature that's out yet, but that is coming.
Okay.
What's on there now?
But
go ahead.
Will that will be updatable through the firmware?
Yes.
So I can just download that new version. All of a sudden, I'll have pause and restart.
Yes.
No problems.
Yes. The way that it currently works, I haven't tried it in record mode yet. So there's two different tracking modes. You've got make your own custom track, and then you've got a recorded track.
Right.
On the recorded track version, you would hit record, and then you would actually physically go manually drive the track that you want.
Right.
That's the most accurate way to do it, by the way. Because it's going to memorize where, it's going to take points where you're at every couple of, feet. And then you can go back and rerun that track as many times as you want after you save it.
Right.
The other version is where you just pull up a map of where you're at. And if it's a big lake, it's a lot easier. But like I was on a little small private pond, and it's basically going off of Google Maps. So you start putting waypoints in and make your track where you want it to go. And then at the end of it, you save it. To start the track, you have to be somewhat relatively near the beginning of that track. So you need to manually drive over to where the track starts at.
Right.
And then hit start, and it'll take you along.
Okay.
If you're in the middle of it, the only way to stop it right now is to hit the power button, which turns the system off and turns it back on. And you can somewhat resume the track, but you need to be on the track to resume it.
Okay.
And the way that you do that is in the app, you'll actually touch the closest waypoint to you. Once you have to drive over there manually, look at your phone and make sure you're pretty close to it. I'd say probably within 10, 15 feet.
Right.
And then hit the start button, and it will somewhat resume you, but it takes a second for it to figure out exactly where you are on that track.
Okay.
So that's one of the issues that we're working with them for. Fixing the firm, when it comes out on a firmware update. Right, that's one of the things I want to be able to do is hit pause and then immediately resume. The other thing that we're going to work with them on is, as of right now, the only way to get to a track is to physically drive over there manually with the remote or the phone and get close to your start point and then hit start. What I want to be able to do is start a track from anywhere on the lake. Yeah. Like if I'm on the opposite side of the lake and I want to go over here and run a track, I want to be able to click on that track, hit start, and it drive me, straight over there.
Right.
Instead of me having to manually do it. Where I was thinking of this is, say I'm over here fishing one bank and I haven't gotten any bites and I want to change lures. I want to be able to hit this other track on the other side of the lake and have it just drive me over there, and then I can change lures while I'm driving. The other feature that we're going to work on coming up soon is the speed of the track. Right now, there is no way to adjust the speed.
Okay.
It's set at between like 1 and 2 miles an hour, which is a pretty common, I would say, bass fishing speed. So, like if you're rolling down a weed line, that's probably about the speed that you can cast out in front of you, reel it all the way back to the boat, and not have to worry about the lure going back behind the boat.
Okay.
But what I want and what we're going to try to shoot for, I can't make any guarantees on any of this stuff. This is all up to Autoboat. This is just stuff that I'm suggesting.
Right.
I want a feature to where I can adjust the speed of the track.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if I'm going to catfish on a creek channel and I want to run planer boards, 1 mile an hour is way too fast. I need to be like 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, maybe 0.5 miles an hour. But that speed is going to change depending on what time of the year it is. In the summer, I might be going a little faster. In the winter, I'm going to be going a whole lot slower.
Yeah.
Right now, there's no way to adjust that speed. So that's one of the things that we're hoping to add later on down the road.
Let's say one day I go out to my local lake and I create my own path, right? I'm thinking about the boat orientation as it's running that path. Like, let's say when I set the recorded path, there's no wind.
Mm-hmm.
Next time I go out and I want to run that path, I have a high wind blowing east. Is the back end of my boat going to be facing another way?
Oh, I see what you're saying. No. So as long as when you record it, you are heading straight the entire time and you're not having to over adjust the trolling motor,
Right.
you're not going to have any issues.
Okay.
That's the whole point of the tracking system, is to account for any wind or current movement. So like just say there's a wind trying to blow you into the bank, the trolling motor is going to do everything it can to keep itself on the track. So even if that means turning 90 degrees and full throttle and out of it to get you back on track, that's what it's going to do.
Okay.
But it's only going to do it at that like 1 to 2 mile an hour pace. It's never going to go too fast. Now, here's a situation that I ran into this past weekend when I was testing out the tracking feature.
Mm-hmm.
If you get into a situation to where you have a wind behind you and it is actually pushing the boat faster than you're supposed to, it will stop running the trolling motor. It will continue you on your path. But if it's like, say you're going in a straight line down a bank and you get a rear wind and it's pushing you faster than its set speed, which is like 1 mile an hour or so, it's just going to turn the trolling motor prop to where it's not spinning at all, and it's going to just keep allowing you to push. So it's not going to turn itself around backwards and try to back you up. I think it's a good thing. Another question that I just saw, somebody commented that the main gear looks like it's made out of plastic, because I showed that in the video only for the reason of the previous model had a 2-piece gear that you would clamp around the trolling motor shaft. Yeah. The new one is a solid 1-piece, and you actually slide it down the shaft because you have to remove the trolling motor head. So you can just take the whole thing and slide it on.
So no point in making it a 2-piece thing anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. That also makes it stronger and more accurate. You don't have to worry about slipping as much. Plastic thing, everybody freaks out about. This is not just your average cheap Chinese plastic. This is a reinforced polymer type of plastic. This is the same crap that Glock lowers are made out of. This is a high quality. It is plastic, but it's not something that, I mean, like, dude, I literally went and drove it into 4 or 5 different docks and stumps just to see if I could break it. And it didn't even hardly scratch. I mean, I got some scuffs on it, but you ain't broke it. And so the previous model is made out of the same stuff. And I've had it on my boat for 3 months. And, dude, I have bashed that thing into so much crap, and nothing's happened to it. Yeah. So it's not cheap plastic. It does have a warranty. If you do happen to break it, give us a call. We'll get you taken care of. Yeah. But not something that I'm worried about at all.
Okay.
Another question that we've had a lot on the video and in phone calls and emails is, are we shipping this to Australia, the UK, Netherlands, middle of freaking nowhere, other side of the pond? We do ship worldwide, but it is not free shipping. You will be required to pay for the shipping. So if you live in Australia or whatever it costs you UPS it over there, and that's what you're going to pay. And
the only way to find out what that shipping cost is to email us at support@tvnation.net. Go ahead and just give me your full shipping address. That way I can quickly and accurately quote the shipping charges and get back to you as fast as possible.
Yeah, if for some reason you do order it on the website and you're in another country and it doesn't pick it up, because sometimes it doesn't for whatever reason, we're going to call you and tell you, hey, this is how much it's going to cost to ship there. Do you want us to send you an invoice for the shipping cost?
Right.
In the 48 lower states of United States of America land, it's free shipping. Hawaii and Alaska, sorry, y'all have to pay for shipping because it's kind of expensive.
Yeah. Which they're probably used to that by now.
Yeah,
anyway,
they probably are. Now, if you're in Hawaii, one thing I will suggest, if you don't want to pay the super high shipping charges, one thing to look into is like a freight forwarder, where we ship it to like California.
San Diego,
yeah,
and
they
then
wait
ship
until
it
they
over.
have enough to put it on a boat, and then they take everything over to the islands at one
Right.
point. Same thing with Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, places like that. The other question that's popping up a lot is is there any talk of maybe a remote foot control instead of handheld? I cannot release any details. Autoboat is aware that there is a need for a foot control.
They know about your
They know that
concerns,
y'all want
okay?
a foot control. Like, just give them a minute. Calm down. Here's another one. Are these coming to Australia? Yes, we can ship it to Australia. Another question that's been asked a few times is, does it support digital brushless trolling motors? And that's a great question. No, it does not. It currently only works with brushed trolling motors, which all of the cheap, clamp-on style trolling motors are all brushed anyways, so it doesn't work with anything. The only thing I know that's brushless is your high-end trolling motors that already have all these GPS functions.
And one of those just now became brushless,
Yeah,
right? That old Trex has been brushed for most of its lifetime.
yeah. So I did announce on the video that we did figure out how to work it with the Edge, and I've been using it with the Edge for a while now. I wanted to give like a few months of testing with it before we announce that it does work with the Edge bow mounts. There's a lot of people asking, is it going to be sold with a retrofit adapter? The way that I figured out how to do it, like I was saying earlier, you don't need any adapter. You just have to drill a hole in your existing trolling
So it's
motor.
going to come with like a kit and a replacement bolt, basically. For you
There's
to
two
be able
bolts
to do
that
it.
you have to. There's one that you need to replace. There's a big plastic like turning knob.
Like a set knob.
Yeah, and that's
basically.
for the clamp that actually holds the trolling motor shaft. You're going to need to get rid of that because it will interfere with the Autoboat. So we're just going to send you a bolt to go in there with a lower profile head.
Right.
And then where you drill and tap the hole, we're going to send you a drill and tap. It's really not hard to do. The frames are made out of aluminum, so they're super easy to drill and tap.
Right.
Anybody can do it. And we'll have a full installation video to show you that it's really not difficult. And then you'll have a second bolt that goes in that hole, and that's what's going to hold the auto drive onto your trolling motor to make that work.
Okay.
A lot of people asking if you can still use the cable drive on your Edge as well as the Autoboat. Answer is no, you cannot. You are going to have to remove the trolling motor head with the cables and the foot pedal in order to make it work on the cable drive Edge. But again, Autoboat does know that there is a need for a foot pedal, so that may be something coming down the pipe in the future. Another question that we've had is, how does the system hold up to saltwater? And that's a great question. The good thing about the Autoboat, with it being mostly polymer, is there's really not a whole lot to rust on it. The few connection points that it has on it are all stainless, so as long as you rinse it after you use it in salt water, it is completely saltwater compatible. You won't have any issues running it in salt water. We did have one comment about the new connectors that come to connect the new connectors that come with the trolling motor, the Pro system, to connect it to your trolling motor shaft wires. It's a little bit different connector than I've ever seen, but it does work very well. I've had it
looks like an Ethernet.
It almost does. It looks like an Ethernet cable.
Yeah.
But the way that it works is it comes pre-installed on the Autoboat smart head, and what you'll need to do is take your positive and negative wires coming out of your trolling motor shaft. You're going to have to cut them to an appropriate length and then strip them back. And then you're going to put that wire, like a positive and negative wire, into the connectors and then close it. And it holds it really, really well. But there's one key detail to that. You cannot twist the wires.
Yep.
They have to remain straight in order for it to clamp it down and get enough pressure on it. If not, you'll pull them right out.
That's the hardest part for me, because
Not
twisting them is almost like slapping the ratchet strap when you're done tying something down and saying, nah, that ain't going nowhere.
So the comment, guy's kind of a jerk. He said definitely would not use those Wago connectors because they are used for houses and not tinned or marine grade in any way. Nothing going to last. Use heat shrinks. Stop being lazy. All right, first off, I have cut apart and taken apart about 6 different trolling motors so far to test the Autoboat on it. Not a single freaking one of them had marine grade wire. Every single one of them had cheap ass copper wire.
Yeah.
Some of them were shocking how little strands of copper wire that it had.
Yeah.
Some of them had like high strand, but none of them were marine grade tin copper wire. So even if you use a marine grade connector, what difference does it make when your main trolling motor wires are not and they're copper? Which, this is totally off subject, but it really pisses me off.
Yeah.
We had to install a Garmin Force not too long ago, and we ended up putting a plug on it to get it to go run through the front deck.
Yeah.
And I cut the original connectors off of it and saw that it was plain copper wire, and about started screaming. I'm like, this is a almost $4,000 trolling motor that people are buying, and it's got crappy copper wiring on here with no marine grade wire. Like, that is BS, dude. I'll get off my soapbox, but that pissed me off.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you.
I will say, so I've been using those connectors since early summer, so I'm probably 4 or 5 months in now, and I've been trying to use it as much as I can. But when I'm not using it, it sits out in the rain.
Right.
Like, I don't have my boat covered, really. It's the trolling motor's just kind of hanging out there.
Yeah.
I've had 0 issues out of that connector.
Yeah.
The thing to remember is it's inside the shaft. So
It's
as long as you don't swamp your motor and leave it submerged for years, it's not gonna have any issues.
Yeah.
So that's, I see where you're going with that. I understand your point, but I'm sorry. It's just
chill, bro.
Chill, bro. It's not that big of a deal.
Put them in there, raise the cost another whatever.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, like, if you don't want to use them, you don't have to.
You can put your own crap on.
You can put butt connectors on there. If you want to do that, go for it. Or if you want to solder it, go for it. It's up to you. So aside from people just being pissed off because they got to wait a little bit longer, that's the majority of the comments is people are like, damn it, I've been waiting forever. Why is this thing taking so long? So I'm hoping we helped answer that question. The big thing is you have to remember that this is not our product. We don't physically make this. This wasn't our idea. No. This is just something that we're importing into the U.S. for people.
We're breaking our butts trying to make it everything it needs to be.
We're working with the company to try to get as many features into it as we possibly can and still make it affordable and as user-friendly as possible. Because, like, for everything, there's a give and take. Like, yeah, we can add all these features, but is it going to degrade the quality of the usage of the app?
At what point does it become the same price as an Ultrex?
Exactly, and that's what we're trying to keep. We're trying to keep this as a budget-friendly option for people that want the features of a GPS trolling motor without the price.
Yeah.
We also want it to be able to be used on the cheapest style trolling motor possible. Mm-hmm. So that's why we kind of stuck with the route that we're going. And we got so many comments and people calling like, why doesn't it work with this trolling motor? Why doesn't it work with that trolling motor? Well, the design that we have works with the bulk majority of them.
Right.
And all the other ones are just, they're very oddball. So we'd have to make a specific adapter or a specific auto drive unit to fit that particular trolling motor. And there's just not enough of them out there to make it worth all the effort to come up with a separate model. The majority of the trolling motors that are out there that are on that cheaper side are going to be Minn Kota style.
Mm-hmm.
I was even on Amazon the other day. Do you know there's like 8 or 9 different knockoff Chinese companies that sell the same exact, well, I didn't say exact, but it looks just like a Minn Kota Endura C2, or it looks like a Newport, but they're just no name like Ching Chong Fing Fong trolling motors.
Really?
Yeah, I saw literally 5 or 6 of them. And they were, you know what's crazy is they were about the same price. I don't know why you would buy old Land of Egg Rolls trolling motor when you can buy a Minn Kota and you know that it works. But I don't know. Any other questions, comments, concerns you can think of about the Autoboat?
No. We might have to do an update podcast over this at some point, depending on, you know, when we come out with new products or release things, there's always those 1 or 2 things that we never fully thought about.
Yeah.
That somebody or a few people bring up, which ends up taking us down other roads and all that other crap. But So what I guess I'm saying is that there might be updates or things that we're not thinking of exactly at this moment that we're not known or privy to, and that might change or need to be explained to you guys later on.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the good thing about having firmware capability now
Yeah.
is for most of aside from hardware issues that if we decide to upgrade something later on down the road,
yeah,
aside from that, all the function issues of it we can fix with firmware if there's enough demand for it.
and as a consumer, that kind of makes me feel better about
Mm-hmm.
purchasing that product, you know? So,
Yeah, if there ever was some kind of problem with programming or electrical components inside or something like that,
Right.
we can add those features in as long as we have to get with Autoboat and have them develop it. But
Yeah.
it's something that can be pushed out on the app
Right.
very easily.
probably pretty quickly as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
look, if you guys want to know anything more about the Autoboat, make sure to check it out at tbnation.net. If you still have questions or concerns about it, please call us at the TB Nation phone number, or you can email us at support@tbnation.net. We'll be more than happy to get your questions answered. Feel free to stop by our shop down here in Georgia. They just opened up the location, or the new shop up in Illinois.
Yep, they got a nice little showroom so you can go in
Beautiful
there.
place that Nate, beautiful facility up there now. So make sure to make your way over there and check out what he's got going on if you're in that Midwest
Bellevue
location.
now.
Bellevue.
But it's
Bellevue,
still it's still right there in Pekin. It's
well, you can either do Bellevue or Pekin.
okay.
Either one.
One of them areas where it
Illinois.
snows up there. It's just find the snow. It's probably not far.
Yeah, look for the snow and the corn, and you'll be somewhere around it.
All right. So, what did you think about the bourbon and the rye?
Scale of 1 to 10 on each. I would give the bourbon a 7, 6 to 7.
Okay.
The rye, I'd probably be. I don't know. I really like that rye. I think I'd probably be up there like 8 or 9, maybe a little bit higher than 9.
That is one of my favorite ryes I've tried today.
That is really good.
I give it a solid 9.
Yeah.
The bourbon, so it's not my preferred flavor profile because it is weeder.
Yeah.
But out of all the weeded bourbons that I've tried, that
This is
is
very good.
absolutely my favorite.
What's your 1 to 10?
I'm gonna give the bourbon an 8 and the rye a 9.
Okay.
I really really like the rye. So far, I have had yet anything to top the rye.
Right.
The only reason it's not a 10 is because of the price point.
Yeah.
If this was a $49.99 bottle, it would be a 10 all day long.
Yep.
But because it's 100 or more, depending on where you buy it and if you can even find it, because it's not widely distributed.
Right.
And the store picks are even harder to find.
Okay.
There's only a couple of stores here in Georgia that I know have store picks of it. But if you can even get them, they're going to be 100 plus.
I think that toasted rye I paid $85 for.
Okay. That's a reasonable price, but even then,
Yeah.
it's still on the high side for a rye.
It is, man. And the more that I get into this bourbon stuff, the more I'm looking at that $30 to $50 range as opposed to that 80, which seems to be pretty common nowadays, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
Well, maybe things will get better at some point, but right now that's where the prices are.
where it is.
I'm hoping if anybody listening is in the Georgia area that knows where I can find the new Wild Turkey 70th anniversary, comment or call and let me know.
Or
'Cause
the
I-
Russell's 15.
Yeah, I can't find a Russell's 15. Well, I did find one Russell's 15, but they wanted like $600 for it, and I was not paying that.
Yeah.
But that is one of the ones that I want us to try because I've heard that the 70th anniversary Wild Turkey tastes like the old Wild Turkey did before they changed all of.
Oh, okay.
So, but it's not available in a lot of places in Georgia yet. I've only seen it in a couple places like way up in North Georgia and then North and South Carolina. But the other thing is I'm not paying $100 for that bottle. That is a $49.99 bottle, and I have seen it on shelves all over the U.S. for $49.99 on the internet. I am not paying $100 for that bottle.
Would you pay 60?
Maybe. I really want that bottle.
You guys could get 60 out of them. It'll be all right.
So
Thank
if you
you.
know, let us know.
Thank you guys for watching, listening. We greatly appreciate it. Please rate the show a 5-star if you're on
Yes.
the podcast. Like and review. Comment if you're on YouTube. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
And don't forget your drain plug
Don't forget your drain plug.
because you don't want to sink with your brand new Autoboat.
That's true.
That'd be bad.
Real bad. Good
Toodles.
night.